Welcome, everyone. So excited to have you here today. My name is Erica and I serve as the program manager. Most of you, I feel like, know me, but you're at the Arnold Innovation Center, a co-working space provided by Conway Corp, conductors housed out of the AIC. And we offer no-cost services to entrepreneurs, along with this awesome building to provide resources and an actual facility to small business owners. I would love to encourage you guys to say that you're here today with us at AIC and Conductor and watching Kayla present today. So if you want to tag us on social media, we would really love that. And if you could just help me welcome Kayla, and we'll get started.
Thank you so much, Erica, and thank you for having me. This is my first time in the building. And I'm really honored to be here and grateful to be asked to come and talk with you all. I was telling them earlier, when you prepare for something like this, so like I talk to groups for a living. I teach at UCA, and so I'm very comfortable getting up in front of people, talking and teaching and engaging. But when it's in a new setting with new people, you don't know what to expect, and so you have these ideas in your head of what it's going to look like and feel like. And this is much more comfortable and intimate and casual than I had prepared in my mind, so that's good for me at least. Okay, so I do want to just take a tiny bit of time and tell you about who I am so that you know why I'm here and told about be speaking on this. I'm not just some random person that is here to teach you about things that hopefully won't be useful. So I work at UCA as a licensed professional counselor. In the therapy world, that is a master's level terminally licensed clinician. I work for the psychology and counseling department, teaching classes for the undergraduate students and the graduate students. Prior to my work at UCA, I worked in school-based mental health for several years. For those that don't know what that means, I was essentially the therapist that went into multiple schools in Conway and provided services to the children and families through an agency called The Point or Pinnacle Point. Loved that work, loved Conway Public Schools, loved the teachers, the administrators, the schools that we have serving our students. And that was such a great opportunity for me to learn more about childhood mental health and just the world of therapy in general. But then moved to UCA and was a therapist at the counseling center there, and then now teach full-time in the department. So that's a little bit about me. Married with 2 kids, living in Conway for 20 years, love Conway. So what I'm essentially talking about today is being a more mindful version of yourself as an entrepreneur. I, being in the helping professions, am not super well versed in entrepreneurial language. I assume that you guys are, raise your hand if you're a business owner. Okay. And then, well, actually, I want to take like 3 minutes and do this just so that I know who everybody is. If you don't mind to kind of go around and just tell me who you are and what your role with the Conductor is, or what your role in the community is. Is that cool? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm Caitlin Crockett. I'm the community coordinator here at the AIC. So with the Conductor, so I manage the space kind of and onboard members and things like that.
She does manage the space.
I'm Caitlin Fitzpatrick. I'm an intern here. I just graduated from UCA. So I just kind of help everybody whenever they need me.
And I know you. You look very familiar.
I don't think I took one of your classes.
Okay.
I might have just seen you on.
Okay, maybe just in your kids. Okay, you look super familiar.
My name is Mallory Watson. I'm the marketing and outreach manager here at Conductor.
Okay.
Ashton Pruitt, I'm a small business in Greenbrier, Southern Savvy, and then also wear another hat, I'm the president of the Chamber of Commerce in Greenbrier as well.
And she's my sister.
My name is Allison James. I am the owner of Honeycomb Innovations, which is a small business and startup consulting firm. I help people start companies and grow small businesses. I'm Erica, program manager.
I'm Erica Rivero, and I work at First Community Bank, and I do diversity and outreach.
I'm Erica. No. Jimmy Warren. I work part-time here.
I'm sorry, what was your first name?
Jimmy. Yeah. Other hats and stuff too, but yeah, the same is important to that.
I'm Dina White. My business is called Black Web Media, and I have a podcast and also do like communications contract work with social impact organizations.
Yeah, you're a familiar face to me as well. I don't know if we've ever met face to face, but are you from Sedalia Whitehead?
Oh, yeah.
And I think maybe
Maybe through her, yeah.
Okay.
He was in the stone, side note.
Oh my gosh. That I look like her. I really do. I've gotten that. I've gotten that. Several years. If I had auburn colored hair, it would be even more of a. She's beautiful, so thank you.
I'm Reagan, I'm with Data Creek Media. Raise your hands, here. Stephanie Crockett, work at Data Creek Media, and then also manage short-term rental properties and things that we own.
Ryan Johnson, I just started my own fractional COO business called Three Sparrows Executive Services. I have a small, medium-sized business grow through executive leadership. Try to keep their budgets low and their growth high.
He's amazing. I'm Rumble Jocelyn. This is my lovely wife, Dr. Alexandra. She started a company. She's the brain behind the company. She's a physician, and we created a company called Inspire International. We're a network marketing company, but we developed an amazing nutritional product for cardiovascular health. We're here originally from Colombia, originally from Chile. We've been here in Congo for over 21 years.
Wow. Okay, wonderful. Well, it's very nice to meet you all. Okay, let's get started with this before you scan this. Yeah.
We do have some on Zoom, so I don't know if you wanna like pull them in the conversation. We do have at least 2 clients on Zoom, so I don't know if you wanna, they can put it in the chat, you can read it, or.
Sure. How do I,
Yeah, let me.
Maybe just, Caitlin, you can tell them to introduce themselves via chat, maybe. We can pull them in. I want to do right all of them.
I didn't know they were there. Sorry to the people on Zoom.
I just had one texting picture of you, so I was like, well, I know there's at least one. They're watching you.
Hopefully it's not like a still shot of me like picking mine up.
You are going live though. I should have mentioned that. You're live on Facebook.
Oh, okay.
What is it?
Now you really feel like it stuff.
We're casual.
I'll relay the info if they come on.
Okay. So a chunk of what we're gonna do is interactive, and so they will, and they won't be able to really participate in that part. I have a copy of what I'm gonna hand out that you can share with them. But they would need to do it later. You know what I mean? I don't know that we didn't get it all transferred over, but enough for them to participate. Okay, so let's get started with Mindful Entrepreneur. So the first thing I want you to do is pull out your phones if you have them with you. And scan this. Now don't start it, but I want it to pull up. So once you scanned it, and give me a thumbs up if everybody's in. Everybody in? Yes. My students laugh at me. I'm not really that old. I'm not that much older than they are, although I'm constantly reminded that I am in fact old enough to be most of their moms age, but they laugh at me because I'm really behind the technology curve. And so I am not the best techie. And they make fun of me for it. Okay, so I think I can go along with you on your screen. I think I can start it. And then you guys can begin to answer the questions. There we go. This is just kind of get a feel of the climate for where you guys all are in terms of not mental health specifically, but your feelings in terms of work-life balance. And this is just in general. This doesn't necessarily mean every day or that this is, you know, something persistent or consistent, but just how true are these things for you, or how true have they ever been for you? Okay, so personal life suffering because of your work, neglecting personal needs because of your work, struggling to find a balance between work and non-work life. So we're hovering right around the middle, neutral. Okay. Although those 2 5s jumped out. Beginning, strongly agree. Okay. How often does your personal life drain you of energy? I should have mentioned these are anonymous. Like, oh, my boss is in the room, I'm gonna have to play it cool. Okay. Okay, everybody done? Got some attrition in 14 and 12. Okay, so it looks like ratings are more favorable in terms of work-life balance, or the mood associated with work-life, in comparison to how much your personal life affects your work life, or how much your work life negatively affects your personal life. So all in all, that's pretty good. Okay, words to describe how you feel about your work-life balance when it's at its best. If you had no concerns, no complaints, everything is perfect. You love your job, love your personal life, love how they correlate. What word would you use? What words would you, I think I gave you an allowance of 3 words. You could put in 3 different words that you would use to describe it. So fulfilling, energizing. Beautiful. Flourishing, optimistic, meaningful, wealthy. Like,
That's what I copied on the honor up there.
We have a refreshing from Zoom.
refreshing, okay? Embarrassed. Thriving. Boring. These are too good. Of all of these, I don't know that I could ever use wealthy, just because I did tell you I work at UCA as a college professor. No shame, like I'm not from shame. I love my job. I love my job. You're not a video. You can say it louder than mine. Hello. I'm sorry to read it.
No, you're good. I was the one that put wealthy, and it's more than just money. It's just being fulfilled and
Sure.
healthy in relationship and double all of those things.
Yeah. Yeah, yes, of course, there are multiple measures of wealth, yeah. Oops. Okay. All right, so now think about the same thing, but think about it at its worst. So what are the negative words you would use when thinking about your work or your personal life? And it can be subjective. It can be, something that you feel about yourself within that environment. It can be, something you feel about your workplace or about the people with which you work. Toxic, that's something we hear a lot. Heavy, hopeless, unhealthy, exhausted, too busy, overwhelming, defeating, stressful, discontent, inconsistent.
Brain fog. I'm saying.
Brain fog. How many of you feel overwhelmed? At least weekly. How many of you feel overwhelmed at least daily? I mean, I feel like that word is like, it's definitely one of the most used words in my lexicon, is like, I'm so overwhelmed. Okay, how many of you feel exhausted? Stressed? Yeah, okay. So we're all kind of feeling the same thing, or have at least at one point or another. Okay, considering your work life, rate your overall level of satisfaction on a scale of 1 to 10. So 1, it's absolutely horrific, you're extremely dissatisfied, and 10 being you are extremely satisfied. So considering your work life.
Yeah, mine's lying. It just says submit, but I can't put it.
Oh, no.
I hit submit now, it says.
Yes, you yeah. All in the middle.
We can all close our eyes and hold up your mind.
Oh, I don't know if it's gonna let me. Okay, that's okay. It doesn't have to pop up. We don't have to do it on the screen. So give yourself a rating from 1 to 10 on your work life. Okay, just put a number in your head. 1 is horrible, 10 is the best. And then give yourself a rating on your personal life from 1 to 10. 1 is horrible, 10 is the best. I don't know why that happened. Sorry, guys.
That's a very cool tool. Yeah, we're enjoying this.
Okay, so everybody got your number? Okay, so now I want to ask you before we start skipping ahead. Okay, so now I want to ask you, think of your numbers for each of those for work life and personal life. What is one thing that would make your number 1 number higher?
Analog. It's definitely a shortage right now.
Yeah, there is a shortage right now. You're right.
Oh, it's serious.
And I think it actually applies to Vyvanse and Focalin and other psychostimulants as well. Yeah, it's a big problem for.
Isn't testing pretty hard too for ADHD now?
Hard, no, but accessible, inaccessible, yes. Yeah, providers are expensive and providers are backed up months. And I mean, it's like a 6-month waiting list for CPAC, which is a really popular place in town. Yeah, the wait list for children specifically it's awful. Okay, so Adderall. So yeah, think about, so say you gave yourself a 4. What's something that you can identify that would make it a 5? And it could be something that would need to change within your work setting. It could be something that you yourself could do differently. It could be something that would be different in your, personal life. But can everybody identify something that would make your number go a little bit higher? Okay. Okay, so the title of the presentation, of course, is a values-driven approach. And so I'm actually really big on using values in therapy I do this a lot with my clients. I've used it a lot in the past. I'm also really big on teaching students about values because when you're 18, part of the slide didn't load. Oh, man, where'd my picture go? Okay, because when you're 18, 19, 20 years old, and sometimes when you're 30 or 40, you may have never been asked what you care about and what you really value. And a lot of my students have never, ever, ever considered what they value. And so when I teach about this, I help them to discover that they've kind of already known, they've kind of known all along what they value. It's just never been, you know, the surface of that has never been scratched. And they're able to look back on their lives or their current, you know, life and recognize the places and spaces that they really enact their values, or they deny them, or they, you know, don't honor them. So I talk about values a lot in class, and I talk about values a lot in therapy, and it's helpful because if you think about what a value is, it's essentially our compass. It's our navigation system. It's what helps guide us to and from. It's what helps protect us and fortify us when we make decisions, when we engage in relationships, when we self-evaluate. Values are really, really, really important. And there are many types, right? We have religious values, and we'll talk about that more in a few slides, but they essentially help to anchor us. And if you have a very clear idea of what your values are, or if you can develop the practice of actively kind of seeking out and searching for your values and identifying them, it kind of gives you a place. It's a fulcrum, is that right? Is that the thing that sits in the middle? It's like a, you know, it's a balance. It's something to help you balance. Okay, so they inform who we are and how we live. They help us define goals, find purpose and meaning, and fortify physical, mental, and emotional health. And I put the quote, "We are our priorities" on here because values are priorities. They're what we prioritize. And if we prioritize something, we typically start to embody that. And my little picture was of a person holding a compass. So just see that in your head. Okay, so the heart of the matter. This is a younger crowd than I was preparing for. So when I wrote that title, I thought of the Don Henley song, "Get Down to the Heart of the Matter." And so I included a picture of Don Henley holding an eagle. He's the lead singer of the Eagles, but that is falling on deaf ears because you guys are younger than I was expecting. So you probably don't even know who I'm talking about. But I always ask students, I always ask students, do you really know what matters to you? And they often say, well, yes, getting good grades, or being accepted into the sorority, or maintaining my friendships, or getting a good job after I graduate. And that's all correct. I'll allow it, but that's not really what they value. Those are kind of the extensions of what they value, or they are the goals or these ideals that they've, you know, that they've established or that they have. But they're the values that are underneath that are kind of what they need help assessing or accessing. So a lot of people really don't know what matters to them until they start to think about it. So I always ask, well, wait, pause, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me get this stuff out first. No. Yes, everybody needs one of those. Very cool. Okay, so while they're passing this out, I always ask students, you know, do you really know what matters to you? And sometimes I've got students that are very introspective, or they have done something like this before, and they are able to really identify specific values. But most students are not, most people are not. And so there are ways in which to identify what you really value, okay? And we are going to do one of those exercises in just a second. But then I also ask the question in terms of what could you not live without? So if you think about that job that you gave a 6, and suddenly tomorrow that job was no longer available to you. COVID happens and that job is no longer on the table, or the company shuts down, or you get fired, or you have some type of, you know, something happens to your physical self or your emotional self and you are not able to perform the duties as assigned previously. What would you miss the most? What would kill you to go without? In terms of your personal life, if things radically changed, if you got a divorce, something happened to somebody that you love, if you had to move, if you lost a dear friend, if you lost a child, what would you miss the most about those relationships? What would you miss the very most about your personal life? And oftentimes being able to answer those questions helps you identify what you value, right? So what do I really, really value about my workplace? What do I really, really value about my work connections or my personal connections? And then the next bullet point, guiding light, days of our lives, one life to live. Again, I started with just guiding light, that identifying values is kind of a guiding light for us. And I was like, oh, guiding light, that was a soap opera. And then days of our lives. Well, we live all these days in our lives, and how we live our lives and the days, and basically I just did a string of old soap operas because they all kind of speak to the fact that values are important and make up the summary of who we are as people from birth to death, or at least they should. But again, you probably don't get that reference because most people don't watch soap operas one, and most people don't know those old ass soap operas. That in our lives, yes. Yes, because it's still on. Oh, and okay, so a common question is, that it's our lives are not defined by the dates of birth and death, they're defined by the dash in the middle. And so I ask students, if something were to happen to you leaving class today, God forbid, what would you want to be remembered for, right? What would you want someone to get up and talk about at your funeral? If your values aren't somewhere in your answer, we have work to do, right? If what you value and what you stand for isn't readily apparent to the people who know and love you and could speak about you at your funeral, this is a great place to start figuring out who you really are and what's at the heart of the matter, the heart of who you are. Okay, so what is your why? Why are you here today? Well, because you love me and you wanted to support me and you're an entrepreneur. And why are you here? Maybe you had to go for a CEU or whatever. You're here because you want to be successful. You're here because you care about your business. You're here because you care about this community, right? Each of you could answer your own why. Why do you stay in a committed relationship? Why did you choose to leave a committed or non-committed relationship? Why did you choose to become a parent? Why have you chosen not to become a parent? Why did you choose the career path? What are the whys to your life? Right? And you can answer all of those questions with a million different answers, right? There's lots of whys to what we do, but hidden within all of those answers is what you really value. Okay. All right, let's go through this exercise. Okay, so what I want you to do, using the little white, or do we cut them all out? Okay, using the little white scrap of paper. You'll need that for this as well. The purple one you can set aside. But what I want you to do is I want you to go through this list of values. And as you read through this list, everything, inarguably is pretty valuable. Okay, so these are all things that, that we could say are valuable or helpful. But some of them, as you read through, are going to kind of jump off the page at you. They're going to speak to you more loudly than the others. Okay. So what I want you to do is I want you to go down and circle every value that you think is most important to who you are or who you want to be. Okay. So for example, as I start to read ability, abundance, acceptance, accountability, yes, they're all fantastic. They're all valuable. But I don't know that any of those jump off the page at me. Right? So I'm going to keep on going. You can be as discriminate or as indiscriminate as you want with this. There's no rule on how many you can circle, but essentially go through and pick the values that you think are the most important in terms of who you are or who you want to be. I always have to tell my college students, if you get to a word and you don't know what it means, raise your hand and I'll define it for you. And the same is true in here. There's something you don't understand. So I love watching students do this because some students are so deliberate and so discerning. And, you know, they methodically go through and they take their time and they're very, very judicious with what they circle. And then other students are like, you know, they circle everything. They're very kind of indiscriminate. It's just kind of neat to see how the decision-making process of some people identify with it.
Just making sure we're awake. Oh my God, they're building upstairs,
Yeah.
the offices.
Yeah.
Well, as long as they're not gonna come through the ceiling, I'm.
Right, sounds like right here.
Yeah. I mean, they're gonna check. I don't know.
Yeah, they're trying to. And this is the condensed version, guys. I have copies of these that have like twice as many. It's like- I think most of your. We'll get into the end.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the problems with values is that sometimes they conflict or they compete. And so, for instance, I value health and wellness. Especially as I am approaching 40 in a month. I'm beginning to value that a little more than I did, say, 10 years ago. But I don't value it enough to lose my sleep over it. And what I mean by that is I would really like to be physically healthier and work out, but I'm lazy. And I also don't want to wake up earlier or sacrifice my lunch hour. So while I value physical health and wellness, I don't really value it as much as I do being lazy or having downtime or not waking up early, right? If you think about a big decision you've ever had to make, you may be in the middle of having to make a big decision right now. You were probably asked, well, how did you decide? Or tell me why you chose that. And you typically have an answer, right? Well, I mean, I had to go with this because so-and-so. or based on X, Y, and Z, I chose this route. What informs that decision is what you value, right? But you could have valued two things. It's kind of the whole, the premise of ethical dilemmas in my field. There are two things that you value, or two things that could be, equally okay or equally not okay, and you have to make a choice, right? Most people have values that come into conflict with one another. And most people have values that are static and fixed. And we also have values that sometimes ebb and flow, or somehow ebb and flow, either because of our age, our developmental stage, contextual factors in our life, so on and so forth. Another thing about this is we do this, and I'm one of those like overthinker, read too deeply into things, but as you go through and you read these words, what they mean to you is what they mean to you, right? And we couldn't really universally agree on what forgiveness means. Like, yes, we know I accept your apology, right? Or I forgive myself for making that mistake. But I'm coming into this space with almost 40 years of history that has informed what I think and feel about forgiveness. And the same is true for every one of you, right? We all kind of have these different notions and different definitions and different meanings to these words. And that's part of the beauty of this exercise. You could have all chosen forgiveness as one of your top values, but not for the exact same reasons. And it doesn't mean the same to every person. Okay, part two, now you need that little scrap sheet of paper. Now I want you to go through, and from the words that you've circled, I want you to pull out your top 10. In no particular order, but just write down the 10 most important values to you. Only 10, Kayla? You sure? Not 11? Yeah, the pruning down is actually a really important part of the process. Just another minute or so. Raise your hand if you're not done. Okay, raise your hand if that was excruciating for you. You were like, oh my God, really? There's no way I can condense down. Okay. How many of you on the first round had at least 25 or more? Okay. How many of you had trouble coming up with 10 for the second round? Like getting to 10? Like how many of you only had like 10 to begin with? Okay. Okay, so now everybody has 10, right? All right, now what I want you to do is go through the list that you just made of 10, and I want you to pull out your top 3 values.
Get those on this card.
No, nothing with the purple yet. 3 most important values to you. You had to live the rest of your days of your lives. The guiding light. You had to live the rest of your days honoring only 3 values. Which would they be?
Like my first Saturday after this English teaching. I'm going backward.
Does everybody have their 3? Okay, which was easier to do? Condensing down to the 10 or siphoning off the 3? The 10 was easier for you? Okay. Okay. All right. What do you think the last step is?
1.
Yes, so look at your 3 and pull out the single most important value. Everybody got it?
Like, well, that pulls that one, so we're gonna kind of like it. Yeah,
Yeah.
this week's, like, this one value spits out these 3, which spits out these 3. Spits out like that.
Yeah, that's a great heuristic. That's a great thing to do. Okay, is everybody get done? We got our top value. Okay, as you are comfortable, I always have to make sure my students know they don't have to share. But as you're comfortable, let's go around and say what you identified as your top value. And if you don't want to share, you say pass, but then I'm going to shame you. Okay.
So faith.
Okay, Faith.
Okay, can we come back to me?
Yeah. Yes. Okay, so Faith.
I said faith, stability was my second one, but my logic was that you can't have stability without faith, so
Okay,
it's hard. to
Okay.
justify.
making a difference. Okay,
Connection. Mine is family, even though I felt like the right thing to answer is to be faith. Go ahead. I'm kidding. I'm gonna go with faith.
okay.
I can't have my family without faith, so.
Yeah. Notice how she said the right thing to say. And that informs what we value. Okay.
Okay. Mine is growth, but like it represents. Yes, family, all that's included, but personal growth is my.
Okay. Okay.
I said relationships.
including our relationship with people. Anyway, so I cheated. by Putting them all together.
Okay,
Do that, ditto, but true.
true. Okay,
Struggle between faith and leadership, but I choose leadership.
okay,
Personal growth.
personal growth. Okay, so you all chose, and actually,
We have to come back to it.
oh yeah, that's right.
Okay, I decided on calmness because I feel like when everything else is going well, I'm not calm.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so I actually have done this 100 times, maybe not 100, but I've done it a lot. And I actually have never had a group answer so many of the same top value. So that's interesting that you guys are, somewhat, unified in that. But even though a lot of you did choose faith, you still had lots of other top values, right? You all value different things. And of course, this is kind of our emphasis to make you choose that top value, but that doesn't negate the original ones that you circled. And it doesn't negate or diminish the top 10. And it doesn't negate or diminish the top 3. Those are all still super, super critical and valuable to you. Well, I know we don't have time to go around and talk about all the explanations and the justifications for why you chose what you chose. But obviously living as humans in the world, you can't just have one value, right? You're not one top value is going to supersede or overshadow every other value. We are complex people who identify and live out a lot of different, value systems or values within our system. So I don't want you to think that just because I had you pick the top value, it means to kind of ignore the other ones that you chose. But I want you to think about your top value, or if it's easier to consider the other 2 in the top 3 or the other, ones that are in your top 10, I want you to think about that value and just give yourself a second to consider why you chose that, which many of you gave that in your answers. But ask yourself why you chose that as your top value. And then I want you to think about how you could use that top value to make yourself happier, more successful, feel more at peace at work, feel more at peace in your personal life. If you chose connection as your top value, how do you honor that every day? Are you honoring it every day? If you're not, that is a source of discontent, whether you believe it or not, because you just went through the process of identifying on your own what you cared about, right? Nobody else can do the same exact sheet that you just did. You picked it out, you thought about it, you did all the cognitive work to determine whether or not you valued it or not. Then you pruned out, you pruned out, you pruned out. You just went through the process of picking what you really, 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 really care about. And that is important because it's a reflection of who you are in the world, right? So if it's who you are in the world and if it's what you really truly care about, how often are you resting upon that value? How often are you bringing that into focus when there's a conflict in your relationship? How often are you bringing it into focus and resting upon it when you have a big decision to make, when you're struggling with anxiety, with insecurity, with depression, with self-loathing? I'm no expert in anything, but I have done a lot of work in mental health, and I work with young people every single day. And I have learned enough to know that it doesn't matter if you're business people, it doesn't matter if you're religious, it doesn't matter if you're a woman, if you're male, female, black, white, it really doesn't matter who you are. We all experience the same depth of emotion, some more than others, but we all have access to the same things that hurt us, right? And yes, some to varying degrees and for very, for differing reasons. But I could give you guys the exact same spiel that I give college students, and it would hit the same way. Because even though you might be 43 or 39 or 26, you're still that little kid that you were when those values began taking place. So when I was thinking about this talk, I was thinking, oh, well, business professionals and entrepreneurs, I need to kind of couch it. Let's do some IO psych and like couch it within I'm like, no, these are just like my college freshmen. They are just like the people that I teach every single day. They're older, they're smarter, They're hopefully more financially secure, hopefully less impulsive. Hopefully more responsible. But at the heart of each one of you, you are that same 6-year-old kid, that same 14-year-old kid who hated their braces and acne. So how often are you really resting upon your values? How often are you bringing them into focus? I'll share a very quick story. I'm about an hour off of schedule. Like there's a whole multiple other slides that I wanted to get to, but I do want to share this really quick story, and you would have had your own stories if we had time to go around and share. But I do want to say, so every time I do this activity, I typically do it with my students, and my top 10 is usually about the same, changing here and there between 1 or 2 values. But in my top 3 is always authenticity and connection. Usually empathy is in my top 3 as well, but authenticity or genuineness, depending on the list that I'm using, and connection are in my top 3 because that is so central to who I am as a professional, who I am as a parent, who I am as a sister. It's just a part of who I am. And I have found over the years that authenticity, the authenticity of me, is more valuable to the people I come in contact with than anything I learned in graduate school. My efficacy as a therapist, I would almost contribute 100% of my authenticity to the success I have with clients and with students. So when I was in graduate school, one of the very first internship or the very first practicum experiences I had was at Arkansas Tech. It was my first place to go and see clients. And heck yeah. And so I was there seeing clients. I'm this new therapist, didn't have a clue what I was doing, scared to death. I got this young client. I still remember her name and how she looked from the top of her head to her tippy toe. But I worked with her all semester. She was a great client. She had a lot of trauma in her background, but just a really good client, built great rapport. And I enjoyed my work with her. Well, as I was about to leave in December, we're working toward termination. And all throughout the semester, I had struggled with, there's these textbooks that we've learned, and I'm supposed to be this therapist, and I'm supposed to do these things to be successful, to be wealthy, to be valued in the program, to be valued as a practitioner. And so in supervision during that semester, I would often tell my professor, Dr. Rao, my mentor, who's now retired, but I would tell him, but Dr. Rao, I just really struggle to keep my therapist hat on. I feel like I'm always just wearing my Kayla hat. And he would say, he was an older white male who had his PhD and was a little bit more entrenched in academia than in clinical practice, but he would say, well, you got to make sure you keep that therapist hat on. You're doing a good job. Just don't forget to keep your therapist hat on. And so during my termination session with this young lady, I'm saying our pleasantries and I'm thanking her for working with me, and she's doing the same. And she said, I just want to take a minute before we get out of here. And I just need to tell you, this was my first experience in therapy, and you have seriously changed my life. I've never had anybody treat me and make me feel as safe as you have at these last 3 or 4 months. And I just can't thank you for what you've done. And I said, oh my gosh, you have no idea how bad I needed to hear that. I'm this new therapist that, she knew I was a student, but I said, thank you so much. I said, that means the world to me. I said, I really appreciate the feedback, because all throughout the semester, I've worried that I haven't been therapist enough, that I'm always kind of in here with my Kayla hat on and not wearing my therapist hat. And this 19-year-old girl instantly got big tears in her eyes. And she said to me, oh my gosh, Kayla, please don't ever take off your Kayla hat. That's exactly what makes you a fantastic therapist. And I couldn't wait to get back to supervision and tell Dr. Rao. And I share that story as often as I can, because I think it validates that the authenticity of who I am and keeping my Kayla hat on helped that young lady. She actually wrote me an email a couple of years ago. So that was in 2014. She wrote me an email a couple of years ago, catching me up on her life, and asked me if I remembered her telling me to never take my Kayla hat off. And I wrote her back and said, girl, you have no idea how much I really have. And thousands of UCA students now know it too, because I share it all the time. But I share that not as a nod to me as a therapist. I'm just a regular old girl who likes helping people, but to encourage you and to empower you, whatever your top value is, whatever your top values are, live them, bring them into focus. If it's being successful in your business, how does that thing that you did on your sheet apply? How can you do more of that? It's what you identified as being important, so make it more of your daily life. Make it more what you fall back on when things aren't going well. The little purple thing is for when I originally did this or learned this activity, the person who did this for us he said, this is kind of along the law of attraction thing, like bring the manifestation. And he said, once you identify your top value, to get a sheet of paper or to get a little, get something you can write on, or you can put it on your screensaver and to write out, I am blank. And not to change the tense, not to change the verbs or any of that stuff, just I am blank. So if your very top value is connection, right? I am connection. And see it every day and say it every day and live it every day. I am authenticity. I am faith. And what that does is it builds into you this sense of who you really are and who you really aspire to be. And so when there's conflict in your relationship, how does your faith play in? When you're having insecurity about who you are in the workplace or what your body looks like at this stage of your life, how does your faith inform what to do, right? Does all of that make sense? So I encourage college students to make it a screensaver on their phone or to write it on a pretty little piece of paper and decorate it and stick it on their bathroom mirror in their dorm. And so many clients will come back and say, you doing that values exercise with me and me writing out, I am blank. I made 7 of those, one on the dashboard of my car, one is a screensaver, one on the mirror. And it reminds me that that is my sanctuary. What I value is my navigator. It's my compass. It's my sanctuary. When girls are being mean and I didn't get invited to the so-and-so, I rest upon, I value authenticity. I was authentic when we had that conversation and that's why they don't accept me anymore. But you know what? I only answer to myself. And when my head hits the pillow at night, I feel comforted by the fact that I've lived out my day according to my values. Okay, I know that we are out of time. I had a whole lot of good fun stuff about boundaries and look at this, the A's, the B's. I told Erica, I said, seriously, this could be a series of, I mean, we could do so much in terms of like mental health and how to actually activate some principles in the workplace, or just as you as entrepreneurs or you with your staff or whatever. So, and I don't have a lot of extensive training in IO psychology, but I can read and I can inform myself. And I am certainly happy to collaborate with other people from the department who do have more training in that. And we are always available to you. I would love to come back and do more stuff. My boundary slides were really good. So I would love to come back and do more stuff, but I really do appreciate y'all having me. And I'm sorry that we ate up more time than I planned. But I hope that that's helpful. And I hope that you're able to kind of use that when stuff comes up and you need a guiding light.
You're officially invited for part 2. Thank you so much for coming, everyone. Our next event is Monday, and that's a Game Changers in Healthcare Innovation. We have a great panel. It's going to be at 12. It's going to be here. We are going to have food for that one. We'd love to see you guys. And Jeff Standridge is going to be moderating that panel. Kayla, you're invited too. I think you'll enjoy it as well. And I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you so much for coming.